There were now just 24 children left. Empty bed spaces easily outnumbered those with bedrolls. He lay back on his and slipped into a light sleep state, still aware of the murmurs and small movements of those around him. His most recent wound itched and buzzed, but barely registered with him. He was able to fall and rise out of this state almost at need now, and it allowed him a precious chance to snatch rest during the day or night. He abruptly opened his eyes and fixed them on a boy creeping down between the mats. He wasn't the target, though, so he allowed himself to relax somewhat. One of the other children was about to lose something or get a beating, or perhaps they would fight off their attacker. It didn't matter. It happened all the time. They encouraged such minor things as stealing from each other. He let his thoughts replay the events of the day. Running the circuit of the camp was standard, and although they had brought out the dogs, they didn't unleash them. That had only happened once or twice, with the last child being brought down and savaged by the black hounds. Strangely, this had not bothered him after that first time. He knew he was the fastest here, and so he knew that the dogs were not for him. Lifting rocks and sand-filled bags until he could barely move his arms didn't bother him either. Nor was it the rope climbing, the wrestling, and the strange exercises that looked like fighting, but seemed to be all about moving as slow as possible. Even when animals were killed and butchered and their organs passed around for examination, it didn't bother him, even if those animals were sometimes previously children who he had recently shared this hut with. He knew what was inside him now, how it all fit, how it could be broken and damaged. That seemed important. No. What bothered him was the sea that restlessly broke upon the rocky shore. He had never seen something so immense. When he snatched glances at it while he ran, it seemed to fill his vision so completely that he lost himself. It watched him, he felt. It was aware of him. Sometimes gently lifting and flowing in among the rocks, sometimes hurling itself with sound and fury. It was alive, an unfathomably huge animal that shifted and roiled with its unknowable thoughts. "I'm not here," he would think as he ran along the shore. "Don't see me, don't take me." Even now he could hear its restless movements. A sudden scuffle, a sharp, wordless cry, and the creeping boy returned to his mat, the faint sounds of repressed pain drifting up from the dark. He gathered with the others in that grey light before sunrise. A stiff breeze that carried the briny breath of the sea with it blew constantly. Nearly naked, their skin was sun-darkened. All of them now had the scars on their limbs, torsos and faces that denoted tests passed. Tattoos, painfully applied, patterned their skin here and there in whorls, lines and glyphs. Not so many as those that gave them instruction, and the boys were eager to receive more. It was a mark of ranking, and it could be seen at a glance what had been achieved and where someone fit. You deferred to someone with more and ignored or sneered at someone with less. He stood silently, slightly apart from the others who fidgeted restlessly or murmured together in low whispers. Something was different this morning. Their instructors would usually be waiting, but today nobody had appeared, and as the usual early morning sea fog rolled in, the boys grew bored. A low, whirring hum broke through the boys' chatter. It was an eerie sound that climbed mournfully. The fog made it difficult to determine its source. The boys instinctively drew together, but he remained slightly apart, suspicious at this new development. Grey shapes, indistinct in the fog, moved at the edges of their sight, lurching and shuffling. From the fog, growls and grunts, yips and yowls came from all sides. He hissed commands to the others to face outwards into the drifting fog, even as he stooped to gather rocks. Not all paid attention, and a boy, his eyes wide with terror, broke from the group and dashed in the direction of the sleeping hut, his form swallowed by the mists. Immediately howls rose from the fog. Other howls answered, sounds of struggle, panting, slaps and thuds, and then a gasping cry that rose and rose into a scream. Urgently, he encouraged the others to gather rocks and stones and stand shoulder to shoulder, facing out into the fog. Some smaller boys he placed in the center of this group with earnest instructions to pass stones to those who might soon be throwing them for their lives. Given purpose and task, the group of children settled down into a grim silence. He could feel a fear building in his guts and wanted nothing more than to run somewhere, anywhere. Intuitively, he suspected that the others would be feeling this too. He needed action. He identified a particular growl that emanated from the mist. He tracked it moving around the group as a dim shadow. Pointing, he had his boys hurl their stones into the mist and was rewarded with a shout of surprise, pain, and anger. Shocked, he realized that it was probably their instructors out there in the fog and not nameless terrors. An overwhelming desire to lash out and pay them back for all the terrors and pain they had meted out rose within him. Again and again he pointed out shadows in the grey. Again and again rocks and stones were hurled into the swirling mists. Only sometimes were they rewarded with a muffled grunt that spoke that they had thrown true, but each strike brought forth bared teeth and fierce grins. They stayed silent, though. That lesson had been painfully taught. Their rocks and stones were soon depleted, but the fog had begun to thin and lift. There was silence in the hollow now, and the boys looked at him now with growing fear and suspicion. Would there be punishment? He had started it. He had steadied and organized them. He had pointed out targets and urged them to throw. Would they be punished because they followed him? He could almost see their thoughts. Several boys exchanged furtive glances and made as if to surround him. He scowled, growled, and bared his teeth. He had already decided to take out one of the boys as quickly and violently as possible to dominate the others. He knew which one it would be and how he would do it when a shrill whistle pierced the growing tension. Their instructors loped into the clearing, pushing and shoving at the boys to get them into a rough line. They were not gentle, and they weren't reticent about using their short, heavy-ended clubs to strike at shins, points of the elbow, or bones at the wrists. The boy noticed that some of them carried bruises and bloody welts that confirmed the boy's suspicions that these were the ones lurking in the fog. He felt a fierce exultation well up within him that was quickly smothered as a dark-eyed and heavily scarred and tattooed man approached and strode along the line. He stopped in front of the boy. "This one," he spoke in a harsh voice.